Ayana namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudirayet. Shunvatam swakata krishnah punyashravana kirtanah hridayantah stohi bhadrani vidunoti suhritsatam. Nashtaprayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. Bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. Okay, so we are meeting after quite a bit. Um, Unintentionally, our break has basically become much longer than we intended it to be. But I guess sometimes it helps, and it helps in basically recentering our thoughts and our efforts, and then coming back to something which we were used to, and we also tend to appreciate things a little better once we also are aware of what it was and the impact it had on our lives. So, in that sense, I'm talking about myself. The fact that I was connecting with you every week gave me an opportunity to have some focused reading and some reflection. And as a consequence, I missed it. And I also felt that this was something which I should get back to at the soonest. And here we are. So I'm happy. I'm happy that we could join again. The last time when we spoke, it was the end of the first canto, and then there was some attempt by us to try and see if we could have a quick recap of the first canto before we begin. And what we are going to do today is not so much recap the first canto in structure, meaning go by all the verses, chapters, etc., trying to reconstruct our conversations from the first canto. What we are going to do is we're going to touch upon some essential topics which would allow us to recenter ourselves on why we are doing what we are doing. Because oftentimes, after several years of Krishna consciousness, one begins to wonder why they were doing what they were doing. It's quite unusual, but it's a fact. Even after 20 years of Krishna consciousness, one they would still not know why they were chanting and why they were associating. Yes, it feels good, but then there may not be an actual intellectual basis for all of this because that may be lost. What is it which is motivating me? Why am I getting into what I'm getting into? Why am I serving? What is the purpose of associating with devotees? What is the purpose of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam? What is the purpose of daily chanting? What is the purpose of the purpose of regulative principles? All of this becomes quite, I would say, fuzzy if one doesn't constantly recenter themselves on the goal. And if you don't recenter yourself on the goal and the purpose of activity, the chances are that we would slowly, steadily lose our conviction to maintain focus. We would also not know how to make improvements. So the idea is to center ourselves on the goal of Krishna consciousness and then come back and put in the activities that help us attain such a goal. The activities themselves can't be subtle experiences. One cannot claim that they feel good about Krishna consciousness or they are feeling much better about Krishna consciousness in their hearts than they did in the previous year or the previous 2 years. These are, I would say, not very easy to calibrate and measure. What is easy to calibrate and easy to measure is activity. What is the quality of my chanting? Am I enthused to chant more? What is the quality of my reading? Am I enthused to read more? Am I more focused on my reading? Am I interested? How often do I feel, how often do I fall asleep during japa time? These can be quantified. You see, if consistently I'm falling asleep during japa time, then there's something for us to look into. You see, there could be disinterest from the perspective of japa, there could be health issues, there could be poor habits of the previous day which are catching up. And all of these need to be examined, and you cannot calibrate and you can't examine, you can't reach any conclusion based on how you feel. Krishna consciousness and the process of Krishna consciousness has nothing to do with how we feel. There are times when you will feel things are quite difficult. There are times when you might feel that everything is difficult. Now, if that were to be a barometer for us to judge if we should go the next day and the year after and the year after and trudge along and then put in and the efforts that are required, it would become very, very difficult, because we would just say that things have become difficult, so we should stop. So it's got nothing to do with how we feel. It has everything to do with parameters of Krishna consciousness, which our acharyas have given us. The parameters of Krishna consciousness are of 5 types. This is the focus. This is Panchanga Bhakti. The Panchanga Bhakti is to first come in touch with Sadhu Sangha. How eager and how enthusiastic are we about Sadhu Sangha? How enthusiastic are we about Namasmaranam and Namakirtanam? How enthusiastic are we about Bhagavat Shravanam, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam? How enthusiastic are we about the worship of the deity, or how appreciative we are of deity worship, how appreciative we are of the presence of the deity in our community, on our homes, in the temple, how appreciative we are of the Dham when we visit it, and how eager are we to experience Vrindavan to the full. How eager are we to experience Vrindavan to the full? And when we talk about Vrindavan, it is not about the Dham. It has to do with Goloka, because there is no difference between Bhauma Vrindavan and Goloka. There's no difference between what's up there in the spiritual sky and the piece of land that we call Vrindavan. There is no difference. The extent to which we are spiritual, we participate in Goloka pastimes. The extent to which we are material, we reflect and take in the material environment, which is a part of Uttar Pradesh in India. Yeah. So it's a matter of how spiritual we are. Our ability to connect to the Dham is entirely internal. What is our capacity to connect to the spiritual sky? To the extent to which we have capacity to connect to the spiritual sky, we have the ability to plug into the spiritual atmosphere whilst we are here on the planet, here in Vrindavan. So Panchanga Bhakti literally talks about the Vrindavan experience. And leading to the Vrindavan experience, there has to be appreciation of Krishna. That's where deity worship comes in. Deity worship is a direct manifestation of Krishna. Krishna as the deity is not different from Krishna the person. Krishna as Srimad Bhagavatam is non-different from Krishna the person. Krishna as Harinam is non-different from Krishna the person. And sadhus who have the ability to give us all of these to the fullest extent are the starting point. Sadhus carry Krishna in their heart. Vaishnavas carry Krishna in their heart. Krishna cannot give Krishna consciousness. Krishna is contained in the heart of sadhus, and sadhus feel compassion and give us Krishna consciousness. So Krishna goes wherever the sadhu desires to send him. If the sadhu desires that servant of mine has served me nicely, or if he decides that this particular soul seems to be so sincere, or he becomes extraordinarily compassionate towards one who has lost the purpose of life, but they seem to be sincere, then Krishna goes into the heart of the individual whom the sadhu bestows compassion onto. Now, that's the reason why Srimad Bhagavatam starts with Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna. Where will you go to listen? Who can talk the Srimad Bhagavatam? Can you hear the Srimad Bhagavatam randomly? It has to be from someone who carries Srimad Bhagavatam in their heart. It has to be from those who come in a certain lineage of speakers of Srimad Bhagavatam. What is the lineage? The lineage of Srila Vyasadeva. The lineage of Srila Vyasadeva is glorified because the lineage of Srila Vyasadeva right up to our predecessors, in the disciplic succession, they all carry the experience of Srimad Bhagavatam. So what we need to do is be able to listen to Srimad Bhagavatam. So you're coming in touch with the sadhu who has experienced Srimad Bhagavatam, who is experiencing Dham, who is experiencing Nam, and they're able to give all of these into our hearts because they feel compassion. And because they feel compassionate towards an individual, Krishna who resides in their heart goes into the heart of the individual whom they glance at. So we get to experience Krishna through Nam when we receive Nam, when we hear Nam from an elevated soul. We get to experience Krishna when we hear Srimad Bhagavatam. We get to experience Krishna when we come in touch with deities. We get to experience Krishna in the Dham, but it starts with the sadhu. The sadhu has to give us Shraddha. The sadhu basically has to pass on his faith onto our hearts, and he does so out of compassion. Krishna doesn't interfere. Krishna doesn't interfere with the process. Krishna is subservient to the will of his devotees. Krishna is subservient to the will of the advanced devotee. Krishna is controlled by the will of his advanced devotees. Krishna goes where they want him to go. They feel compassionate and they're distributing names around the world, and then Krishna basically goes into the ears and then he establishes himself in the heart. Whether they have the ability to accept or not accept is a different question. Whether there is adhikar, authority, qualification, credits to accept, not accept, and the extent to which they can accept, that's a different story. But the sadhu desires to pass on mercy. He's passing on Krishna, he's passing on prema. He carries on the legacy of Lord Nityananda. Lord Nityananda basically distributed Harinam, and he distributed Harinam in such a powerful way. His Sankirtan was very different. Lord Nityananda's Sankirtan strategy was very different. His Sankirtan strategy was knocking on doors and giving them Nam, and this is Balaram. But he did not go door to door in Navadvip and in different parts of Bengal in the mood of Balaram. He went in the mood of Lakshman. Lakshman in Rama Avatar, when Krishna is Ram, Lakshman experiences Dasya. He experiences extreme level or extraordinarily pure devotional service in the mood of a servant, Dasya Bhakti. Now, Lord Chaitanya enthuses Lord Nityananda and he shows him that I'm Ram, your brother. Lord Nityananda develops the mood of Lakshman because Lord Chaitanya could not have ordered Balaram. Krishna would not have ordered Balaram. He's the older brother. But Lord Chaitanya orders Nityananda Ram and he orders Haridas Thakur, go and preach in Bengal. He goes in the mood of Lakshman, in the mood of Dasa Dasanu Das. So the Dasa Dasanu Das concept comes from the mood of Lakshman in the Ramayana, and that mood is carried by Lord Nityananda Ram. That's why Lord Chaitanya needs to be served in that mood by us. So we have to carry the mood of Dasa Dasanu Das, being the servant of the servant of the servant. Lord Nityananda Ram carries that mood. He looks at Lord Chaitanya, takes the order of Lord Chaitanya to spread his name in every village, every town, and he goes door to door. He goes door to door in every village, every town in Bengal. He knocks on the door and then he requests the inhabitants to chant the holy names. And this is holy name coming from Nitai himself. This is coming directly from the source of everything. Nitai, Balaram, is the source of everything. He is the Sandhini potency. He is the Sat. In the Sat, Chit, Ananda, he is the Sat. He is the eternality concept. If there is an eternal relationship, if there's an eternal Godhead, if there's an eternal quality of the spiritual sky, that potency comes from Balaram. So this is Balaram himself who is wanting to give the eternal gift of Nam, and he is knocking on the door. And if people refuse because they are so dense, you can imagine how dense would someone be to refuse Balaram. How dense would they be? So he falls on the floor and then rolls on the ground in great anguish and cries that I am unable to do my service because my Lord, Lord Chaitanya, has ordered me to pass on the holy name. He has ordered me to establish prema. He has ordered me to distribute prema. But this soul is not accepting it. He just laments and cries and beats the ground with his hands, and he rolls on the ground in anguish because he's unable to do the service. This service mood comes from Lakshman. Yeah? Because when Nitai first comes in touch with Lord Chaitanya, he is worshipped as a spiritual master. And then before he is asked to serve, Lord Chaitanya's relationship with him changes. Lord Chaitanya becomes Lord Ram's mood. Go distribute. Then there's a lot of stricture, there's Dasya Bhakti. So this Dasya Bhakti which we need for us to approach Lord Chaitanya comes from Lord Nitai. And this Dasya Bhakti that we need for us to be able to serve so that we could receive mercy and then distribute mercy comes from Nitai. This is the mood of Nityananda Ram, this Dasya Bhakti. This Dasya Bhakti is the mood of Nityananda Ram because he sees his master also as Lord Ram. He sees him also as Lord Ram. As a consequence, he establishes this mood of wanting to distribute, just as Lakshman would take on the order of Lord Ram. And just to serve, Lakshman did not sleep for 14 years. When Lord Ram was in the forest, he was so eager to serve and he was so enthused and excited that he was going to have exclusive opportunity with no competition of wanting to render service, that he basically served with no sleep. He refused to eat, sleep, nothing, because it would interrupt his service. So, this mood, this intensity, which Lord Nitai carried when he distributed the holy names, came from him. Then comes the mad behavior. Hmm? Prema Unmada. Prema Unmada. He is carrying the treasure of Prema, the entire compassion and the treasure of Prema, the love of Prema that Lord Chaitanya has in his heart, the entire amount of compassion which Lord Chaitanya has in his heart is bestowed upon Nitai. And what happens when he receives this Prema, when he receives this connection, and he receives this mercy from Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda Ram goes mad. He goes mad. This is Prema Unmada. He becomes mad because he has received this extraordinary quantity of love which has been thrown upon him on his head, and as a consequence, he goes mad, and his mad behavior, unpredictable, erratic behavior, is seen simply because he carries the compassion of the spiritual world. He becomes extraordinarily approachable even by those who can be considered as, they would basically not take the holy names easily, but then they would approach Lord Nitai because he was approachable. He was approachable by everyone. He was practically approachable by everyone because he carried this compassion in his heart. Now, why did he carry such compassion in his heart, and where did this compassion come from? How could Lord Nitai have so much compassion? How could Krishna have so much compassion? Krishna descends as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to very specifically experience the bhakti of his devotees. Without experiencing the bhakti of his devotees, he cannot pass on, or he cannot really understand why this is so. These are confidential reasons, which is given in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The confidential reasons for the descent of Lord Gauranga is that he could not understand the nature of devotion of his devotees. He observed Srimati Radharani. Krishna observed Srimati Radharani. He cannot understand Srimati Radharani's bhakti. What is this devotion? He can't understand the confidential associates of Raja, the way they serve him and the way they go mad and the way they're attracted to him. He can't understand it. He really can't understand, what is it which is about me which is making them so mad? What is it which is about me where they're driving themselves crazy in wanting to serve? So Krishna descends wanting to understand his own beauty because he can't understand what is so good looking. What is the whole nature of my beauty? Why is it that my beauty is considered to be extraordinary? He can't understand it. Many of us, perhaps most of us, think we are very good looking. But Krishna, being a realist and being God, he is not under any illusion. He doesn't want to know, why am I looking? Why is everybody looking at me like this? Why am I considered so good looking? How does my devotee experience me? So he wants to descend, and he descends in the mood of Srimati Radharani. Who is Lord Gauranga? Lord Gauranga is Radha and Krishna together. You have Radha and Krishna separate. On the altar, you have Radha Landanishwara, Radha Gokulananda, you have Sri Radha Shamsundar and Radha Damodar. You have so many Radha Krishna deities. When they combine together, it's Lord Gauranga. So you can imagine how special that is. So where did this compassion come from? This compassion comes from Srimati Radharani. The extraordinary compassion that is carried by Lord Chaitanya and bestowed upon Lord Nitai to spread the holy names, to save the entire existence of humanity, and to save all the entities of creation, comes from Srimati Radharani, the Divine Mother herself. It is her compassion. It is her compassion, because what other compassion can Lord Chaitanya offer? He is carrying the mood of Srimati Radharani. This is the love of Srimati Radharani, and Srimati Radharani can't understand that I can't separate myself from my beloved even for a few fractions when my eyelashes close. You see, when my eyesight is obscured by tears, when I'm shedding tears, I can't see who is in front of me. That moment of separation makes it unbearable for me. How is it possible that these living entities are living away from my beloved for millions and millions and millions of lifetimes? So she can't understand that. So that compassion, because she knows what is suffering, she has empathy. That compassion of Srimati Radharani is carried by Lord Gauranga, and he gives this to Lord Nityananda to distribute. He's giving this to Lord Nityananda. Lord Nityananda carries the compassion of Gauranga, which is the compassion of Srimati Radharani. And he distributes Naam throughout the world through the agency of Srila Prabhupada and the servants and the servants of the servants of the servants, so many generations. All of them are distributing the holy name, but the qualification for distribution comes from Lord Nitai's behavior. Lord Nitai's behavior is Dasa Dasanudas. The intensity of service comes from Lord Nitai. Someone is not accepting, it is not their fault, there must be something wrong. He starts lamenting and starts really beating the floor. He falls down in anguish because he can't do his service. He falls down in anguish, rolls on the ground in dust of Navadvip and different places he goes to because someone is not accepting this great gift which he is supposed to offer. And this gift has come from Gauranga himself. And Gauranga himself is able to give this gift because he is Krishna in the mood of Radharani. So this is ultimately Radharani's kripa. This is ultimately Radharani's kripa. This compassion is Radharani's kripa. She is the one who is basically manifesting herself as Gauranga. This is Krishna in Radharani's mood. Because otherwise, as Krishna himself, he can't understand what his devotees go through. He can't empathize as much as a devotee can empathize. She is the greatest of devotees. As a consequence, she empathizes with the suffering of separation. And she wants to distribute. And when she wants to distribute, she basically is looking at the souls and understanding the separation, and she understands her separation. And she is bewildered by our behavior, that for millions of lifetimes we take chances with life, where we forget Krishna, we want to just move on. Sometimes we become very close, we run away. We come very close and we run away. She is astonished by all of this. So she comes up with a plan. She comes as Gauranga, basically. And Gauranga gives this to Lord Nityananda Ram, who is naturally suited because he is the spiritual master of the whole world. He is also Sevaka Bhagavan. He has no other pleasure. Lord Nitai has no other pleasure other than making Lord Gauranga happy. Balaram does not know a concept of happiness which is separate from Krishna. He is Sevaka Bhagavan, that's his nature. Balaram does not know how to become independently happy. He does not know that. Yes, Balaramji has his rasa dance, he has his own pastimes, but ultimately for him, if it's not really connected to Krishna's service directly, he can't be happy. His sense of happiness lies in serving Krishna. So for Nitai, he's absolutely suited for this purpose, for this mission, because he's not only extraordinarily eager, he is made for that purpose. He is the first expansion who is basically made for the purpose of service. And he is a spiritual master of the whole world. And he carries this compassion. He has no enviousness whatsoever. He does not discriminate. He does not really look at souls on the road and starts thinking, will this soul be qualified and this will be qualified, that person would be qualified. He doesn't think, he distributes. He just distributes. He distributes Harinam, he distributes Prema. Why is Prema so rare? Why is the whole concept of Krishna Prema so rare? Our objective is Krishna Prema. And why is it so rare? Because when Krishna Prema is attained by a devotee, Krishna becomes subservient to that devotee. Now, Krishna is locked up in the heart of the devotee. That devotee has Krishna in their hearts. this is so rare. It's because Krishna exists for his devotees, the devotees exist for Krishna. It's a reciprocal relationship. And it is very rare because this is a circumstance where the Supreme Personality of Godhead submits himself fully. Now, the context of Srimad Bhagavatam is such that you could talk about Nam. Nam is glorified in the Padma Purana, it's glorified in the various Puranas. You could talk about the whole concept of moksha, which is liberation. It is definitely touched upon as one of the four main pillars or objectives in the Vedas. It's the subject matter of the Vedas. The subject matter of the Vedas is dharma, artha, kama, moksha. These are the four pillars on the subject matter of the Vedas. So, moksha itself is liberation, which takes one beyond the material sky, which takes one beyond the material sky. But there are different Puranas which talk about the whole concept of dharma, artha, kama, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. They talk about it. They talk about it. But then what was so unusual and why was there a need for Srimad Bhagavatam? There is one thing where you look at gradations of, I would say, intimacy with Krishna based on how close you can get to him. Krishna is manifested as a separated energies in this world. And if you choose to worship the separated energies, which are the demigods, then you get that close to Krishna. It's within this material universe, it's within the material creation. You get that close to Krishna to the extent to which you come in close touch with his separated energies. Now, if you go beyond the separated energies and you start getting in touch with the expansions and the avatars of Krishna, then there are different gradations of relationships with those avatars and how proximate you can get to. Yeah? You notice basically in different avatars, if you generally take the concept of Vaikuntha, the concept of Vaikuntha is that there's formality. This formality was recognized by Lakshman when he was serving Lord Ram. He could recognize this formality. He was, in fact, he was actually quite upset that there was so much formality and he could not get close to his brother because Lord Ram was a king. So the concept of a king with a lot of formal entourage, rules, regulations, protocol before you could come in touch with them, there's a scene in Srimad Ramayana. You can see in Ramayana. And a devotee who is serving him very intimately, which is Lakshman, he feels quite upset that he can't get close to his brother. This is his brother. But the brother itself is surrounded by so much paraphernalia and entourage and so many other things that he really feels that there's distance between them. So on different planets, these are not, the devotee is not dealing with separated energy. They're dealing directly with the Lord, but the Lord has an entourage, he has protocol, he has so many formalities in the Vaikuntha planet, and it is basically very nicely exemplified in Lord Ram's life. Lord Ram's life, in fact, is basically even more, I would say, his brotherhood. He experienced the intimacy of being a brother. He also experienced the intimacy of being a servant. But there was so much formality that the brother can't really get close to his, his older brother. He can't really get close to him. He can't really deal with him, and he can't really speak to him and meet with him, etc. So this formality is also an indication of how close you can get to Krishna is seen in different planets. In the material world, you deal with the separated energies, the demigods. So you are in touch with Krishna even when you worship the demigods. But there's a great deal of separation because these are separated energies. Then you go to the Vaikuntha planets, there's intense formality because there's an entourage, there's protocol, and there are rules and regulations for coming in touch with the Lord. But when you come into, let's say, for example, Dwaraka, the rules and regulations are still existing. You're much closer now. You're much closer to home. This is again the same Krishna. In Dwaraka, he is worshipped quite opulently. And because he's a part of a kingdom, there's still hierarchy, there is still a certain level of protocol. You observe this Even in the Dwarka pastimes, you observe that there's a lot of protocol in dealing with Krishna simply because of the fact that there is Aishwarya. There's a lot of, I would say, his opulence which takes over and dominates the relationship. There is a domination of the opulence. Say, for instance, if you have a friend who is very, very powerful, who is the leader of a country, he is your childhood friend. Now, in one sense, he is a friend of yours. In another sense, he is also the leader of the country. How do you get close to him? What kind of language would you speak? Would you not be careful? There would be such, I would say, divisions of formality, because you can never equate yourself on the same level as your friend because he is so much more accomplished. Your friend is far more accomplished than yourself because this friend of yours has become the prime minister or the president or whatever of a country. Now, there's a lot of formality. You can never equate yourself, but even if you remember your childhood pastimes, and even if you remember all the closeness that you enjoyed during the years when you're growing up, you can't really get close to him because you can't equate yourself on a social, economic, and other basis to this person. You can't. So this is basically, I would say, a separation. There's a certain degree of separation, because even though you're close, you are highly restricted in dealing with how you want to behave with this. But then you also have the circumstance in Vraja. Why is it so special? Why is Krishna Bhakti in Vraja so special? It is so special because the friend is a friend. The parent is a parent. All the friends of Krishna in Vraja consider him an equal. They do not consider him superior. They, in fact, Mother Yashoda thinks her son is dependent on her. Mother Yashoda fears for the life of her son. Balaram plays the role of a protector. Even though he is the older brother, he also plays the role of a protector. He's also a friend. The friends of Krishna don't consider him anything. They really can't understand all the mystical happenings around him. They can't really understand why the demons are being killed by Krishna. They think that the demigods are protecting Krishna. They think that Narayan is protecting Krishna. They offer prayers to God for protecting their friend. They offer prayers to God for protecting their son. This is Vraja Bhakti, the degree of separation which is found in every other realm between the jiva and God, Bhagavan, is absent. There is no separation here. This is Vishramba. What is Vishramba? Vishramba means there's equality. A friend is a friend. He has rights to put, his foot on Krishna. He has the right to feed Krishna what he has half eaten. He has a right to, he has a basic right to fight with Krishna. They have serious fights, the cowherd boys. They have very serious fights with sticks. Yeah? You can imagine young boys, they can get angry. Yes, they love each other, but it doesn't mean that there wouldn't be disagreements and there would be fights. They have serious fights of wrestling and rolling around. How would you do this if there were to be a degree of separation which separates you and gives you an impression that whom you're dealing with is the supreme person? He is the summum bonum. The rasa that's available in Vraja is absent in Vaikuntha. It is covered over by the opulence of Vaikuntha. It's existing. It exists, but it is covered over. It's completely covered over by the Aishwarya. When we talk about Vraja, there's a beautiful verse in the 10th canto which talks about the coming of Uddhava into Vrindavan. Sri Uddhava comes from Dwaraka. He rides an extraordinarily opulent chariot, very, very attractive horses, very, very opulent, very grand chariot. But then Shastra is very nicely saying, when the chariot enters Braja, the dust of the cows, hooves of the cows, because the cows are returning at that time at 6 o'clock in the evening. If you've ever been in Vrindavan in the evening, you would see cows coming back home. Yeah, they would just go one behind the other. They would go back home. No one knows how they know where to go, but it's basically quite a mystical sight. You will find all the cows returning at 6 o'clock from different parts to their respective homes after grazing here and there. When the cows are returning home, those days Vrindavan had a lot of muddy roads. There was just mud. The hooves of the cows would raise up quite a dust. The dust of the cows covered the chariot of Uddhava. Basically, our acharyas and Srimad Bhagavatam is saying the sweetness of Braja, which is the dust of Braja, is sweet. The sweetness of Braja covers up the opulence of Dwaraka. So the greatest proximity of relationship that is found in Braja. This prema, this Vraja prema, which is absent and not given even to the residents of Dwaraka, which is absent and not seen much, and it is not prevalent so much in Vaikuntha. You can't really see it. And it is completely lost to those who just want liberation. The liberated souls who kept an objective of liberation on their heads and pursued the 4 pillars as given in the Vedas, this is absent to them because they don't get the relationship based on the sadhana they do. The Vedic process of liberation does not give them a relationship with Rajendra Nandan. The Vedic process does not give them prema. The Vedic process does not really bring them on the streets of Raja, making them mad after Krishna's love. Krishna prema is not given. So this was the work of Srila Vyasadeva. He basically had given the 4 pillars of attainment, and this was the subject matter of the Vedas. He had then given a more, I would say, defined objective in the different Puranas, which glorified different avatars of Krishna. But he was despondent. His despondency, his grief was such that he had not really spoken about the highest rasa that's available in Braja. So he wanted to exclusively focus and create a pathway, a blazing pathway, which takes one directly to the sands of Raja, to the dust of Raja. Nowhere else is it given that Krishna is the origin of all avatars. Why is Krishna Swayam, Bhagavan Swayam? Why is he the Samambonam? Why is he the origin of all other avatars? Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. This is the topic that we read about in the first canto. Why is he the origin of all avatars? Because all the other rasas, relationships available with all other avatars have their origin in the relationship in Braja. Once you come to Braja Bhakti and you experience Braja Bhakti and you understand the Bhakti and the Prema that's given in our line through our Acharyas, it would be very easy to understand the Dasya of Sri Ramayan. It would be very easy to understand the Dasya in Vaikuntha planets. You can understand it very easily. You can understand other rasas. But for a devotee who is experiencing the rasa that is found in the Vaikuntha planets, Braja Bhakti can be bewildering because they're used to formality, they're used to structure, they're used to a lot of, I would say, regulations and protocol, that they would find it appalling that a devotee can have such a close relationship with someone whom they consider their master. The sweetness of Braja Bhakti, where Krishna is giving us everything, this prema which is contained in Braja Bhakti, is Sarva Rasasar. It is Sarva Rasasar. It is the Samambonam. It is basically, it contains the essence of every relationship that you can possibly have in creation and beyond. That's the reason why Krishna is the Samambonam. There's also a hierarchical structure of how Krishna expands into the different Purusha avatars, etc., and then eventually comes as an avatar. But the other way of understanding it is also the fact that the sum total of all rasas is in Braja Bhakti. This is the highest. This is the highest. This is the highest. So in this particular place, what is being given to us is being given. What is being given to us is so rare that even the residents of Dwaraka, the residents of Vaikuntha, they don't experience this. They don't experience this. It does not mean that we are superior to the residents of Dwaraka, the residents of Vaikuntha. It simply means that the objective of the process that we have been given is so lofty that they even do not have access to this. And if we do succeed in being able to attain this, then you can imagine how big a gift this is from Lord Nityananda. This is not available. What is being distributed to us is not available. That's why the topic of adhikar comes. Are we even qualified? Are we even qualified to be a part of Lord Chaitanya's movement? The answer is absolutely not. Are we doing enough by the chanting of 16 rounds? Absolutely not. Are we doing more, or are we doing enough compared to a sage who has meditated and done austerities for thousands of lifetimes to attain Vaikuntha planets? No, absolutely not. It's logical for us to understand that what we have been given by Lord Chaitanya, and most importantly by Srila Prabhupada. In recent times, Lord Chaitanya's representative is Srila Prabhupada. The most prominent representative is Srila Prabhupada. In recent times, most prominent. And most, I would say, his service to Shri Lord Chaitanya was exemplary because of the fact that he practically spread the holy names around the whole world. Now, are we qualified for that? The answer is no. We have no qualification whatsoever. Who can claim that they are entitled to this bhakti in Vraja? Only a madman would do that. If they understood that the Dwaraka devotees don't have access, the devotees in Ayodhya cannot get close to Krishna, who is Ram. They can't get close to him because there's so much protocol. And our process ultimately allows us to jump on the shoulders of Krishna if you're a cowherd boy. Yeah. If you are a gopi, for instance, in terms of being motherly, Vatsalya Prem, then this gopi has the authority, like Mother Yashoda, to chastise Krishna, to chase him with a stick. Yeah, would you chase Lord Ram with a stick in Ayodhya? You can't, because there's protocol. You can't do that to Lord Narayan with his 4 arms and all the weapons. And there's so many different Vishnudutas who surround him. They'll beat us up. But here in Vraja, there's Vishramba, and the Vraja Bhakti is so special that the cowherd boys tell Krishna that my feet are paining. Krishna, here, press my feet. Or here's a fruit I just bit. It is so tasty. Here, bite it too. They do this. They do this. The cowherd girls, during one pastime, they tie up Krishna's shika with the shika of the other Brahmana boys who came to steal butter, and they give them a thrashing. Can you imagine the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Samam Bonam, being given a thrashing by young cowherd girls? It happens in Vraja. This is Vraja Bhakti, where there's Vishramba, there's equality, and this is Prema, and that is why it is so rare, because the Vaikuntha planets don't have a taste of this. And that's what Srimad Bhagavatam is all about. Srila Vyasadeva wanted to give us something which is not contained in anything else. He wanted to reveal the greatest of truth in the first canto. It's being revealed to us that Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. All rasas that one experiences with Krishna basically are the origin of every other rasa that's experienced in the Vaikuntha planets and elsewhere. Yeah, he is Akila Rasamrita Sindhu. Yeah. So basically, all the rasas, the ocean of all rasas, all kinds of relationships, the origin of everything is Krishna. That's how he's Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. What is experienced in Vraja Bhakti is so exclusive that one can't imagine experiencing that in Vaikuntha. And this is being given to us on the streets of everywhere around the world by the mercy of Lord Nitai. So that's where the qualification part comes. One needs to understand that this is very rare and it is not available easily. And if we miss it this lifetime, it could be the last opportunity because we didn't quite qualify. We may have to go through God knows what for a few more lifetimes for us to get back on track. Yeah, we don't know how complex the world could get. We just do not know. It's complex as it is. What is to say that things are going to be easier 100 years from now, or 200 or 300 years from now? Who knows? So the treasure has been given, it's been distributed. So one needs to hold on to it. And one needs to hold on to it in the mood of Lord Nityanandaram, where one becomes intensely focused on Dasya Bhakti, of being a Dasa Dasano Das. I am the servant of the servant of the servants. This is the mood of Lord Nityananda. This mood is required as a precursor to carry the compassion of Lord Nitai. If you want to preach, you need to carry this mood. Because without this mood, we cannot have an understanding of the compassion of Lord Nityanandaram. And without that understanding, we really can't act. It's very difficult for us because it's a very difficult process for us to relate to it. So this is basically the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam. The subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam extends over and above the objective of the Vedas. It extends over and above the objective of every other form of bhakti that is out there in terms of what is being given. This is prema, it's being given so distributed so nicely and easily. And what is being asked of us is very simple as well. Then the question then arises as to why should we do this, Prabhu? I'm happy as it is. There are some devotees who have even told me this. I'm happy as it is. Then why go through all this trouble? I'm happy with my little life here on planet Earth. Which sometimes people say that, which is the truth. They feel quite contented. They feel that their life is okay. Life is treating them fine. They are not really struggling with life. They are not struggling with anything. So as a consequence, there is no urgency. They don't really feel a need for trying to do something which is, I would say, otherworldly, or something which is not necessarily what they perceive and they can feel sensually as their, in the sphere of where they are. But the fact remains that every identity that we have established in this world, every identity that we have established since birth, also has the seed of destruction sown into it. If you establish the identity of male, female, if you establish the identity of father, mother, child, sister, brother, friend, establish any identity in this world. I'm sorry, I forgot professional. You establish an identity in this world. As soon as the establishment of the identity, there's a seed of destruction which is also tied to that identity. Unbeknownst to us, that identity is being worked on by material nature. It's being whittled down to be empty. It's just a matter of time. Unbeknownst to us, that identity of ours is already being attacked by material nature. The extent to which we exist in passion, to that extent we will be attached to that identity. The extent to which we exist in passion, to that extent we'll be attached to the identity. The extent to which we exist in passion, we'll be attached to the identity of father, mother, son, daughter, yeah, sister, brother, friends. The extent to which we are in passion, we'll be attached. And to that extent, when it whittles down and when it starts getting destroyed by the time factor, by kala, to that extent, we will also experience trauma. We will experience trauma to the extent to which we are in passion. The proportion of trauma is equal to the proportion of passion. Yeah, it is passion that causes great suffering. Those who are in the mode of ignorance, their senses are already become dull, that they don't experience pain as much as ones who are in passion. The ones who are in passion are the ones who are attached to the trappings of the world. They're attached to the identities of the world. They're attached to being something in this world. They're attached to their connections through the body. But they're attached to things which are being broken down as we speak. Srila Prabhupada emphasized several times. He emphasized several times that it is not so much that we have the same body that is growing old. He is to say that your body has changed. Not so much changed as in has become old and has become less useful. Your body has changed essentially means that you basically have been given a new body based on your desires, and the amount of time you have on the planet, etc., you keep getting new bodies. These are new bodies, even though we imagine them to be changes to an existing body, because they are basically what I would call as minute changes, cellular changes that are not easily perceived. So the point we are trying to make here is our own body is changing, and it's changing every second. And we receive bodies which are problematic based on the nature of what the soul needs to do and experience as we go along. It is said that the nature of the body changes every 12 years. Yeah. For a new body to be constructed and deconstructed, it takes 12 years. If you notice, some of us who came into devotional service, we looked a little different. Now we look quite different, in the sense, in terms of people who see us, they see certain things differently. And the fact is that when you chant mantras and we engage in pure devotional service, you develop aspirations of wanting to stay in Raja. You come in touch with Krishna so powerfully through the Bhagavatam. You come in touch with Krishna so powerfully through Nam, through Seva, through the deity. You develop desires of wanting more and more, of wanting to be a part of Krishna's life. So our whole sadhana process revolves around giving us the Krishna experience with great intensity. We come in touch with Krishna throughout the day from the morning. So Srila Prabhupada instituted this. He starts with Guru Puja, which is the concept of Sadhu Sangha. We remember the Guru who gave us faith with Samsaradava prayers. We also witness the deity. Then we chant. We come in touch with Krishna's name, which is not different from Krishna. Then we read Srimad Bhagavatam. Here, Srimad Bhagavatam, we are again coming in touch with Krishna, who is non-different from Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam is. So we come in touch with Krishna's, literary form in one sense. Then we worship the deities. We have darshan. So the point we're trying to make is all of this cultivates desires. When we hear a class, it cultivates desires for the future. A preacher's class is supposed to cultivate proper desires, which would lead the audience to aspire for the angas of bhakti. The inspiration for the angas of bhakti have to come from the class. That's the whole idea of giving class. The giving class part is to modify the desires of the audience. The audience comes with desires which are associated with many other identities in this world. They just come back from work, and then they are very anxious that work has not been very pleasant with them. They have come back from home. They may be very anxious that one of the relatives or one of their identities as a part of a family is being attacked by material nature. They come with all these aspirations and they want to modify all of this somehow or the other to fix their life. The preacher's objective, on the other hand, when he sits there and when we talk about Srimad Bhagavatam, when we give class on Krishna Katha, when we give class on Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the idea is to be able to inculcate and deposit faith and to be able to allow the audience to develop desires for Panchanga Bhakti, inspiring the audience to develop the identity of Krishna Bhakti. That is the objective of the preacher. Because they have so many identities. We have so many identities in the world, and they're all getting destroyed. It's just a matter of time. I'm not trying to make this sound very morbid, but it is reality. It is reality. The objective of the preacher is to allow the audience to help them understand that they need to focus on their eternal identity. And this is how they do it. They need to come in touch with the eternal life. They need to come in touch with Krishna in the various ways Krishna represents himself, through Bhagavatam, through the deity form, through his dham, through sadhus who constantly carry him in their hearts, through the name. So this is the whole idea. Then the whole sadhana process basically has the objective of reinforcing our identity as a servant of Krishna. The identity of a servant of Krishna starts with just that. So I am Krishna Das, I am Krishna Dasi. That's the first step. Then one takes up sadhana and they engage in sadhana bhakti, which is rules and regulations. Rules and regulations are absolutely required as a part of sadhana bhakti. Rules and regulations are absolutely required. And it is absolutely required because one, it helps one become very regulated as they go along in their service. So you need rules and regulations on how to do things, how to worship the deity, how to cook prasadam, what is to be done before making bhoga, what is to be done whilst, before you approach Srimad Bhagavatam. There are certain rules and regulations that we follow, which are all absolutely required in sadhana bhakti because we are still, in the process of purification. Then, when we engage our limbs in the service of the Lord, whilst engaging in sadhana bhakti, we also engage our limbs in the service of the Lord. Our limbs are being purified. We are being purified. What is this whole concept of purification? Is purification an objective of Krishna consciousness? The answer is no. Krishna consciousness does not have the objective of purification. Purification is the objective of Mayavadis. They think that their world ends with purification. What is purification? Purification is basically being free of the influence of matter. Purification is to be free of the influence of matter. This is the objective of a Mayavadi whose only goal in life is to liberate themselves. Moksha. Our objective is not purification. Our objective is relationship. Rasa. As a consequence, our entire program revolves around developing relationships with Krishna. Purification is a matter of an additional benefit or a prerequisite which works along the way. As you chant, you get purified. As you get purified, you also tend to chant better. And because you chant better with a greater focus, Krishna is pleased and holy name begins revealing who you are in relationship to Krishna. This is our process. Our process is about developing a relationship. Purification is a step. So there is Namaparad, there is Namabhas, and there is Shuddhanam. These are three different stages. There is Namaparad. When does Aparad take place? Aparad during the chanting of Nam takes place when there are material desires, even though you have received so many instructions about them on a daily basis. What are material desires? Material desires are simply manifestations of desires which are connected to our identities other than being Krishna Das and Krishna Dasi. What is an anartha? An anartha is nothing but desires that are connected to the identities we have in this world and have nothing to do with being Krishna Das and Krishna Dasi. If the predominant desire of an individual is to be Krishna Das and Krishna Dasi, everything else will just simply follow suit because the original goal has been stated. I have no other objective other than wanting to serve. If I have no other objective other than wanting to serve, then every other identity will follow and be in line with that identity of wanting to serve. It's a fact. If there is no other objective other than wanting to serve, every other identity that we have will make adjustments because our desires would be so. Our desires for interacting with the rest of what is already known to us as identities of being professional father, mother, etc., all of these will fall in place based on our desire to serve, because we will be extraordinarily focused and we would know what to compromise and what not to compromise. They would fall in line. What are anarthas? Anarthas are desires that we establish and goals that we establish for life that have nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. They have nothing to do with the objective of the initiation process that we have taken. That have nothing to do with the objective of Mahaprabhu. They have nothing to do with Vraja Bhakti. They basically are almost a separate existence. Then we are dealing with Krishna's energies then, with far greater degrees of separation than we could even imagine. That's where trouble starts. This is the reason why it's called an anartha. What do you think really bothers a devotee when they sit down and chant? Do you think a devotee is very bothered about chanting and gets disturbed because they can't concentrate? Because, oh, they haven't really done this and done that for Krishna? Are they really agitated while chanting because they haven't served very nicely the previous day? Very rarely does that happen. Most of the time, the agitation in the minds of devotees when they chant has to do with issues with other identities in the world. This problem, that problem, this problem, that problem. That's where we get really bothered. We get bothered because we have so many different identities, and we are not very focused on the main identity of being Krishna Das, Krishna Dasi. If you set the objective of being Krishna Das, Krishna Dasi, readjust your life and say that this is the only objective I have in life, because this is so rare. I have been given this objective. I can't afford to lose it. And then you look at the world and say, now the world has to adjust to me because I have chosen a lofty ideal. And then you look and see what you could do to make some adjustments to life so that people in the family can also participate, or they could at least not disturb us. One of them participating in Krishna consciousness is the best alternative. Then we move forward. Then the objectives become clear. This is anartha nivritti. The process of anartha nivritti has a lot to do with having material desires, even though we have been given multiple instructions about them during the course of bhakti. That's the last offense against the holy name. That is anartha nivritti. Anartha, that which has no meaning. Why doesn't something have any meaning? It has no meaning because it's temporary. It's an anartha. It's temporary. It needs to be understood more carefully so that it doesn't affect your Krishna consciousness. This is the issue. Why do you think the mind is agitated when we sit down to read Srimad Bhagavatam? Why do you think the mind is agitated when we want to pick up the beads? Why does that happen? It happens because we are in passion, material passion. Then one needs to wonder how to modify this particular state of consciousness. What is it that I can do? Maybe I'm sleeping very late. Maybe the food that I'm eating is not prasadam. Or maybe, some level of discipline has to be brought into what we are taking in terms of life the previous night. Yeah. In terms of so many things, because people get exposed to so many things in this world. And as a consequence, this agitation and coming in touch with contamination of passion is very high. So it's very agitating when they sit down for japa. The point we're trying to make here is that the program that's been given to us requires us to very powerfully come in touch with Krishna. One of the forms is Srimad Bhagavatam. This form is considered super special, and there's such great emphasis given in the first canto of hearing, because this is the process that was chosen by Parikshit Maharaj, the one who was going to depart right at the onset of Kali Yuga. The incident occurs that he is going to depart. This is the process that's been chosen by Maharaj Parikshit. This is the basic mode of deliverance. What does Srimad Bhagavatam do when you read it? The beginning and the middle and the end, Srimad Bhagavatam enthuses us about the chanting of Harinam. Harinam, when chanted very nicely, enthuses us about Bhagavatam and supports us. So the objective is that you have been given something, we have been given something which is absolutely rare, and it is not even available to those devotees who are eternal servants of Krishna in Dwaraka, the eternal servants of Sri Ram in Ayodhya. We have been given something so rare. Now, if someone has been given something so rare, they're duty bound to protect it. They're duty bound to recognize what works and what doesn't work in this particular process. And then they're supposed to pursue it with all their heart because it's such a lofty goal. Then you have to examine to readjust life so that it really can suit this purpose. This is our duty. This is what we're supposed to do. Those days, people left home. They never came back until they attained their objective. Srila Sukadev Goswami left home, not even samskaras. Yeah, I can't be in this world. I need to do something about it. They already understood what the world was even before they came into being. In the womb of the mother, they knew that this world was nonsense. You had to get out. So the planning began, and the moment he's born, he just does not even undergo samskaras, then he leaves. So the point we're trying to make is that there was a time when people really understood the problems of being in this world. They understood how difficult it is to get out. They understood how dangerous it is to have objectives here, because those objectives in themselves, if they are not directly related to the process of bhakti, can cause problems in the longer run. They can be very problematic. So they understood it. So there's a need for us to develop such consciousness. So we are basically connecting again after this few weeks hiatus, I would say, a break, for us to be able to pick up on where we left. The verse that is almost the last verse, which I left when we left, is text 38. This is the penultimate verse of the first canto. And text 38 is Yashrotavyam ato japyam yat kartavyam nibihi prabho smartavyam bhajaniyam va bruhi yadva viparyayam. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Please let me know what a man should hear, chant, remember, and worship, and also what he should not do. Please explain all this to me. This is Parikshit Maharaj to Sukadev Goswami. This is the one but last verse of the previous canto. So I think I gave a little bit of what we should do and what we shouldn't do in terms of approach. We spoke about the rarity of Raja Bhakti. We spoke about the rarity of coming in touch with Mahaprabhu. We spoke about the fact that we have multiple identities that clash and interfere with so many different objectives, and we should be very careful in watering those identities to the point where they take over as the main identity. We need to water the identity of being Krishna Das and Krishna Dasi. It is done by coming in touch very effectively with Krishna directly. This is the process of bhakti. There isn't any more specific sadhana. You're directly being put in touch with the Lord Himself. You come in touch with sadhus who give us faith. They carry Krishna in their hearts. The sound vibration carries Krishna. When it enters into our ears, it establishes itself and destroys the nescience, the material nature, the nescience and the cobwebs that we have in our heart. We come in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Krishna Himself. When we come in touch with the deity form, Krishna Himself. Come in touch with Vraja, it's Krishna Himself. Vraja Bhumi is non-different from the Lord because His pastimes are non-different from Him and His associates. So this is our process. You go into any one of our temples, this is what we have been given. The attempt of our acharyas, the attempt of our sadhana is to re-establish an identity. They are trying to refocus, re-emphasize, make this whole process of us being able to become proper servants, Krishna Das, Krishna Dasi, they're bringing that into reality. It starts with Krishna Das, Krishna Dasi. When that is done nicely and one crosses over, the process of anartha nivritti is almost done, then one understands what they are in the spiritual sky. If they understand what they are in the spiritual sky, then they water that particular tree even more effectively, because it is like knowing who you are in relationship to Krishna. Then they begin endeavoring towards such a goal with even greater fervor, greater focus. So this is how it works. You first fall in love. You fall in love with Krishna by coming in touch with Him so powerfully through His name, through the sadhus, through His deity form, through the dham. Once you're in love, it becomes easy to surrender. One cannot surrender without love. There is no surrender without love. How can you surrender to someone whom you don't love? So first there has to be love, then there's surrender. And this love comes by coming in touch very effectively as a servant. Then one develops confidence that my master will protect me. If I take shelter of Naam, Naam will protect me. Naam is there with me at all times. This basically is the mood of a bhakta who has surrendered, because there's love. So as a consequence, there's surrender. They don't experience fear, because you can't really experience fear and surrender. There can be some vulnerability in the process of surrender, which is a part of the process of surrender. It's the nature of surrender. The nature of surrender requires a little vulnerability because we don't know what it is. But we trust the beloved and we surrender and we go through it and we come out. much closer to the beloved than we were before. There's even greater love. And without love and surrender, there can't be proper service. So our process is to first love, surrender, and then serve. And how do you love and how do you surrender without knowing who you are? So you start off with Krishna Das and Krishna Dasi, complete the process of Anatta Nivritti to know who you are. And once the identity is established, then you fall in love even more. And then you surrender. And then you serve nicely because now you know who you are, then you would know what your service is. So this is the process. It's so effective, it's so powerful, and it is extraordinarily rare. It's Is it worth investing an entire lifetime into this? Absolutely. That's what we read in the Srimad Bhagavatam. We come across incident after incident of people dedicating themselves because they have found the objective to be so lofty. They have found it is so wonderful that it is worth dedicating life. We have objectives and we dedicate our lives to, but then if you know what this is, then you dedicate your life to this, which is what real sadhus do. And so many of our predecessors have done it already. So I'm not talking afresh. This is exactly how it works. It requires 100% energy, it requires dedication, and then you make a lot of progress. So I think I'm going to stop here. Next week, we will take on um, the second canto, and then we move forward. Okay, so if you have any questions, then I could take those questions.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Uh,
Haribo.
Well, Prabhu, thank you very much. And I really felt very um, enlightened because we are just going to approach Nityananda Tradashi, speaking about Lord
Yes.
Nityananda, yes. And is that the reason, Prabhu? Because Lord Nityananda has taken the mood of like Lord Ram, as his Lord. Is it the reason that he's called Nityananda Ram?
Not necessarily. That's because he's Balaram.
Okay, okay,
Yeah, see, I want to distinguish this.
okay.
It is Lord Chaitanya who shows Nitai that he is also Ram. And Nitai, the moment he sees Ram, he takes on the mood of Lakshman. Then Lord Chaitanya orders him, because he could not order Balaram, he can order Lakshman. Go and preach.
Somebody is there to ask, otherwise, I will ask this question later.
Mhm.
If somebody else wants to ask now.
Why don't you go for it anyways? Then they could ask
Okay,
next.
okay. Sometimes, like, okay, when you sit down to chant, you have a little bit of guilt. Oh, I would have done this service better. Oh, now if I don't do this service now, maybe later it will be too late for me to do that service. So, how we can get out of this mode when while chanting? Sometimes you think, oh, that the person won't be coming at that time if I don't go at the same when the person is coming. So how, I don't know how to uh,
I
like
understand.
yeah, okay,
So,
thank you.
a couple of points. One is that if it's an organizational issue, then you deal with it before you sit for chanting. This issue comes up quite often when we do not chant at the same time, same place, with the same patterns. It can come up. But
Yes.
a lot of our devotees are also overwhelmed with service. Sometimes the service basically makes it, in the sense, the service or what they need to do overwhelms them to the point where they don't have what we would call as exclusive time for them to sit and chant. So they
Hmm.
struggle with all these organizational issues um, before they sit down and chant. Um, 2 points to make here is, number one, if these are organizational, then perhaps a little meditation would help on how to organize ourselves better and how to coordinate all this better, in the sense that if these are all the questions that are there, resolve them before you sit down, is the point I'm trying to make. That's the first point.
Okay.
Second, because these are naturally resolvable, it is not with a little effort, it's naturally resolvable, or there should be some solution, because we get bothered by things which are unresolved, they're open. So if you
mm,
can close these topics to at a reasonable level, then you have a fair chance of being able to concentrate. That's the first point.
mm,
The second point we want to make is, um, it is not so bad to be so busy serving and being overwhelmed with topics of service whilst sitting to chant, because it is not, I wouldn't really consider it as big a liability as I would if one were to constantly meditate on what they need to do at work and what they need to do with this problem and that problem of their lives. So it's marginally much better. So that's the point. In fact, devotees who are very busy serving, they in fact relish the quiet time of chanting, because it gives them space, and it's they find some time, and they carve out the day and say that I have so much to do. If I could just dedicate myself to calling upon the names
mm, mm,
peacefully, it will be so wonderful. They really relish
mm,
the chanting.
yeah,
And it is good to be busy in devotional service, especially if you're in the West.
mm,
In the West, the possibility of contaminating our senses by coming in touch with matter
mm,
is very, very high, simply because in most cases there is no relationship with Krishna
mm,
in the environment.
mm,
So if you have a lot of service while you live in the West, it's always better, because by doing a lot of service, you get an opportunity to purify your senses, and that is much safer and much better than not having service.
mm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Yeah, that really makes sense. Yeah.
Sure,
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu.
sure. Any other question or comment?
Garanga, bro.
Gauranga.
I just wanted to ask, you spoke a lot on Lord Nityananda. I remember a while back when I came into Krishna consciousness, we would chant the 12 names of Lord Nityananda. And in the translation, it says that it's auspicious. Desires become fulfilled when you chant between a specific time. I think it was from 6 to 8:30 a.m. And I was thinking, any significance behind this? I know you can chant anytime, but why 6 to 8:30?
I have read that as well. I have not read the original script as to why it says 6 to 8:30, but I've read it as well. And my only point on that is that it's the beginning of the day, and basically meditating on Lord Nityananda's names in the beginning of the day would allow us to receive His mercy and would allow us to focus on our services in a very effective way. So it's like remembering or doing Guru Puja. It's like doing the arati for the Guru in the morning. So as a consequence, he is practically sitting on top of your head, because you're performing this ritual at the top of the day. Whatever you do in the top of the day, the beginning of the day, is going to dominate your day. And allowing Lord Nitai to dominate the day, I guess, is the objective.
Thanks, bro.
Sure.
And Harkish Prabhu,
Yes.
in the class, you said that Supreme Lord submit himself to the devotee. I just missed that point. Will you be able to tell, like, who goes out and distribute the prema? Something you said.
Well,
You know,
basically, the Supreme Lord, I think I made the statement that Krishna
yeah,
submits himself to his devotees.
yeah, correct. Okay,
Krishna becomes controlled by his devotees,
okay,
and Krishna is in the heart of the pure devotee. The pure devotee takes Krishna from his heart and distributes it to those whom he feels merciful toward.
okay, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's where the whole concept of coming in touch with the advanced devotees of the Lord and serving them, pranipatena pariprashnena
It's
sevaya. The
safe.
seva concept comes in, serving the Bhakta Bhagavat. The book Bhagavat and the Bhakta Bhagavat, the devotee Bhagavat comes. Because when you serve the devotee Bhagavat, then they have the ability to give faith. They have the ability to offer faith, because Krishna is in their hearts,
Mm,
and they have the ability to take what's in their heart and distribute it as they wish. And Krishna is subservient to them. He says, "You're going to distribute me and give me to this person. Okay, I'll go there." So when the spiritual master chants on the beads and gives us the beads while initiation, the spiritual master is also infusing the beads with his mood of relationship with Krishna. So the sambandha of the spiritual master with Krishna is passed on to the disciple when the initiation process happens. That's what is the whole process of initiation, is where the spiritual master basically gives his mood to and his relationship, and he gives the knowledge of his relationship, the sambandha gyan, to the disciple. So this is the whole concept, which is what I was trying to explain, that the guru has Krishna in his heart, and he feels very merciful on the prospective devotee who is serving him very nicely. And as a consequence, he says, I want to give this wonderful gift to you. And then Krishna, who is the actual gift, says, okay, because you are my very dear devotee, I'm subservient to you, I'm your beloved, you can give me wherever you please. So that's the point I was trying to make.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Sure. Yes. Haribol, did anybody else have a question? I can't hear anybody, so if you are speaking, perhaps you need to unmute yourself.
Goranga Prabhu, I have one more question that I just missed, if that's okay.
Sure.
You had already mentioned this, but whilst writing notes, I forgot to write it down. You mentioned how if you're in the mode of passion, that equates to the same amount of trauma that one would experience. And you mentioned something about the mode of ignorance, but I just missed that whilst writing it down. What do they not experience?
Well, yeah, those in the mode of ignorance, their senses are dulled to the point where they don't experience pain to the extent to which a person who is in passion experiences pain. Because those who are in the mode of ignorance are already so deep into suffering that they don't even recognize their suffering anymore. So you find an animal which is in the mode of ignorance. You sometimes find, a pig in a gutter in the sewer, and you start thinking that this is like intense suffering in reality. But because of the conditioning of the animal, because it's in the mode of ignorance, it just accepts the suffering as pleasure. You see, it's almost as if they don't even know what is suffering. Those in passion are those who develop a lot of attachments by nature of passion. As a consequence, when those attachments don't get fulfilled, or when the object of their attachment and their attention gets, experiences some level of destruction, they become very disturbed. So that's the point I was trying to make.
Thank you.
Sure.
Now, if no one else has a question, some glories on Ika Chakra. If you have time.
Glories of what?
Ika Chakra Dham.
Glories of Eka Chakra Dham. Where have you been there?
I went some years back, but a long time I haven't been, so I would like to hear.
So is the case with me. It's been 10 years.
10 years as well.
Yeah. What to say of the glories of Eka Chakra Dham? It's been a while. I think we'll reserve it for some other session.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I don't know whether I'm putting this question in a right way or not, but when you mentioned about the mode of passion, you also mentioned about, your connectivity with the parents as well, like thinking about your parents, thinking about your son, you're thinking about your daughter, or thinking about your relatives. So when it comes to the parents, will that be a mode of passion or Prabhu, or it can be a mode of goodness?
Not necessarily. It's the matter of distinguishing duty versus attachment. It is a matter of distinguishing attachment versus affection. Mode of goodness is affection. One can be very affectionate and be very duty bound towards whom they are attached to and they love. Sorry, whom they are connected to and whom they love. Yeah? This is being duty bound and they're being affectionate. They're not attached. They're not attached. Attachment is when basically the loss of a person or disturbance in the relationship overwhelms us to such a point where we are unable to continue with devotional service effectively. So So there's a difference between affection and attachment. Attachment falls in the category of mode of passion, where, for instance, if one says, um, let's say they have a relative, any relative, and they say whatever they say is right, regardless of what they are. Now, this
Okay.
is attachment.
Okay.
Yeah. But then affection is where we recognize right, wrong. We want to assist. We want to serve. We want to basically assist and care for them. And this is basically affection. So in devotional service and in higher planetary systems, in the mode of goodness, there's a lot of affection. There is not a case of there's no attachment there. There's a difference there. That's the point I was trying to make. Attachment is passion. Affection is the mode of goodness.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Haribol.
Sure.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hi, Krishna.
Prabhuji, in this class, you're mentioning that that we should be engaged, keep ourselves engaged in many services, and the same point was coming in my mind. If we take on many services, then it becomes some disturbances also in mind, like while chanting, and we the thoughts going on that I have to do this and then that, and it's kind of planning, and there is restlessness, and that same thought was coming in my mind that I should reduce and cut the things that so I can focus more on reading and chanting, and I should reduce the outside activities. So can you please say something on this with more clarity, that will it be disturbance in our sadhana, or how will it affect?
Okay. So a couple of points I want to make here. Now, if you notice, number one is that we all have some amount of time. If we really introspect and we put all the activities that we have on the table, we will find that the days where we are able to do our sadhana well, we are able to feel very satisfied about ourselves, are days when we are really busy. For most of us, there could be some circumstances in certain people's lives where they may have health issues, they may have challenges where they can't cope. So that's a different story. We can't really give, I would say, a general, statement. We can't make a general statement in that regard. But for most people who do not have too many challenges, etc., with health, etc., then for them, they would basically benefit immensely by a busy day where they're trying their best to use their time to serve Krishna, give their time to Krishna. During that very busy day, carving out 2 hours for chanting helps them focus, and they can find some space in that particular 2 hours. So it makes it easy for them. Now, the same situation, if you were to take the same person and take away all their activities and then just tell them to chant, you would suddenly find the day is filling up with things which they don't really need to do. So what I'm trying to say is, in Krishna consciousness, it's better to be busy, or to be reasonably busy. Let me put it this way: to be reasonably busy than to be completely free of any pressure. There should be pressure, and the reason there should be pressure is as follows: without intensity, we cannot penetrate the material covering. Please understand that earlier the question was from the Mataji who asked, Padmavati Nitai Mataji. She asked whether how do you overcome these thoughts, because we're overwhelmed with service related issues, and as a consequence we sometimes can't concentrate. This is easy to fix because it's an organizational situation. If there are too many questions coming up at 7 in the morning about service that has to be done in the day, it means that there's an organizational issue which has to be corrected. Maybe people need to realize that they're affecting each other in a bad way. There has to be more communication, etc. These are organizational issues. Yeah. But being busy is wonderful because it basically gives you the intensity. When you have an intense day, it gives you the ability to penetrate material nature and to overcome our own weaknesses because we have an opportunity to transcend. So the point I'm trying to make is having a very busy Krishna conscious day is much better than having a day where there's tremendous room and we just don't know how to spend it. As a consequence, the time gets wasted and we find that we're engaging in activity which is not very conducive. In my experience, I have found that days when, for example, you have to leave for the Rath Yatra, on the day when there's a big important festival and then there has to be seva to be done in the temple, these are days when we are more effective in using our time than days where there isn't any plan and there isn't any service. That was the point I was trying to make. And I was wanting to say that if your challenge is consistently, day in and day out, if your challenge is that you constantly are struggling with the roster on who is going to come for what service, then there's a problem there in the first place. Yeah, there is an issue there, which probably requires, talking to other team members and talking to the temple management, etc., because that's an issue. Because that problem can't be an everyday problem. It shouldn't be an everyday problem because there's a problem there in itself. Yeah, either there is not a people are not everybody is committed, or there is a understaffing where enough people are not there on the project, and then everybody is stretched and nobody has time for their own sadhana. So these are issues that have to be ironed out. But as a very general remark, being busy with Krishna consciousness is much, much better than being free and complacent, having a day where everything belongs to us, the time belongs to us. Just to give an example, I was just wanting to just say that that is much better. That's all.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Sure.
Hare Krishna. You mentioned the issue of sleep. If you're falling asleep when chanting more often than you should, quite a lot. I mean, I can't seem to find out the problem. What's the cause of this? It seems to, all the things like going to bed early, eating prasadam and so on. Can you just list all the things, all the possibilities that it could be? I might be missing something. What's causing this?
Well, see, there are several reasons for this. The idea is that there is tamas. Let's look at it from a very mystical, foundational aspect. There is tamas. Tamas, the mode of ignorance. There is tamas, which is predominating, and as a consequence, the moment we want to raise our consciousness first has to overcome this tamas. So the first problem that comes up and is being put on the table is deal with the tamas. This is what you have in your hand. So this is the foundational issue. This is the bigger problem. Now, how do you take care of this is where there could be certain lifestyle changes. There could be dietary changes, perhaps, lifestyle changes include diet, if in one sense. And then there could also be health issues where the person basically is probably not having good quality sleep over a prolonged period of time, and they're not able to cope with this. They just wake up and then they kind of start dozing off because they just don't have the physical ability to stay alert. So, but in reality, from a mystical or at a very foundation, if you want to really hack it, you are looking at a problem where there's a lot of tamas, and that tamas is basically coming to the surface. And a good example or a good point in this is, if you remember the 8th canto, you have the churning of the milk ocean by the devas and the asuras, and they're looking for the pot of amrit. Yeah. And when the churning begins, the first thing that happens is you have the hala hala poison come up from the ocean. The first thing that comes up is the poison from the ocean. Lord Shiva has to digest the poison. And then they start churning, they start endeavoring, and then you have the other things that come up, and they receive other gifts. So this is how our sadhana is as well. In many ways, the first thing that comes up is a lot of poison, a lot of tamas, which has to be dealt with. So we first have to look at it from a lifestyle perspective to see how I could introduce the mode of goodness. So I reduce the tamas that comes up. We also look at it from the practices of, say, worshipping the guru before chanting. We look at it from the perspective of also chanting the names of Lord Narasimhadev, the Narasimha Pranam, seeking his shelter so that we have the strength to overcome this tamas that is coming up, the mode of ignorance that is coming up. This is basically it. This the symbolic represent. I wouldn't really call it symbolic. It was an event which took place, the churning of the milk ocean. But I can say we can draw an analogy. We can draw an analogy from that particular example, from that incident, that the churning of the milk ocean. The first thing that you do is you bring up a lot of poison. You deal with the poison. If you deal with the poison effectively, then you have the ability to continue. Otherwise, we just doze off, like everybody was dozing off because the poison and the fumes were so intense, is that they couldn't endeavor after that. So that's the point I'm trying to make. So Guru Puja helps, worshipping the Guru. Narasimha Arati in the night before helps. Worshipping Lord Narasimhadev in the morning before starting japa helps. For some people, they need to just jump out of bed and do a little preliminary wash and sit down and chant. For some others, they would require to have a shower, a quick shower, before they sit and chant. So everybody has their own little system they need to follow for them to feel good about it, in the sense for them to feel comfortable. So this is what needs to be worked upon. But if you were to underline it and say, what is it in just one sentence? It is tamas. It is the mode of ignorance. It needs to be dealt with. And it needs to be dealt with at many different angles. Lifestyle changes, addition of prayers and mantras, perhaps minor adjustments to how we start the day, the time we go to sleep, etc. So that's what I was talking about.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Prabhu.
Sure. Anything else? Okay. So if there aren't any more questions, we'll meet again the following week. We're going to continue the weekly sessions. We'll keep the same timing. There were some requests for an earlier timing, an earlier slot. It might become too early for those who are joining from the States. So we would need to see what we could do and how we could make an adjustment. Was someone saying something? I'm sorry. Did I miss it? So thank you so much for joining me. Hare Krishna. Wish you the
Hare
best.
Krishna, thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.